We have Eddie Lubbers visiting us today. Eddie is the president of the Caribbean Travel Network, based in both Havana and in Santo Domingo.
Correct.
In the Dominican Republic. And Eddie has a bit of a proposition for Canadians, because we know that Canadians love their winter beach holiday. Cuba and the DR are huge markets, among the biggest, for Canadians seeking a bit of sun in the winter. But we tend to always do the same thing, don't we?
Yeah.
Jump on a plane and get to the beach as fast as possible. That's it. You don't even really know what country you're in. So you have some different ideas about how to particularly engage in those destinations. And tell us a bit about that.
Well, you're absolutely right. It's amazing that in a market where there's like 1 million people traveling from Canada to Cuba, I think maybe between 5 and 10% actually go to Havana. Perhaps, and out of that percentage, the people go on a day trip, whereas actually Havana is a destination in itself. So, as a destination compared to Miami or Vegas or New York, I consider Havana to be a short break city destination where you can actually have a day on the beach, but you can also have a night on the town that you wouldn't get when you go to Varadero or Holguin or any of the Keys. And then there's culture, of course. You can go and visit museums, and then there's the interaction with the people.
Yeah.
So as a destination, Havana is really amazing. And it's within the same flight range as you would get the other city destinations where people go here.
And there is service from Canada to Havana directly, right? Especially Montreal and Toronto.
Yes, there's Air Transat and Sunwing, and then there's Air Canada, obviously, and Cubana that fly direct.
That's right, yes. Yeah. So it's not too bad, and 3.5 hours. So as a city, there is a lot of culture. There's a lot of things to do there. History.
Absolutely. There's. I'd say for 3 days or 4 days, just in Havana, you'll be fine. There's dozens of museums you can go to, of all kinds, and then there's also just being in a city that is different than a North American city, a city where you can walk around, you can spend your days walking around. Havana, isn't that nice?
So, Eddie, do you also recommend that people can easily get out of the city itself and, explore a bit of the countryside?
Absolutely, absolutely. Cuba, being an island 1,200 kilometers long, it's ideal for driving around. It's safe. Roads are pretty good. Roads are empty. There's no, you see the odd classic car, but then it's a wide open road, and there's so many places to visit. The countryside, there's an area called Vinales where the tobacco is being grown, which is a 2-hour drive from Havana, which then makes a perfect base to explore the entire province of Vinales. Then there are the other cities like Cienfuegos, which is a 200-year-old city with a wonderful old town. Then there is Sancti Spiritus, and you can do a whole connection of cities. So I'd certainly recommend to take a car and just spend a few days driving around without having planned it. You can research it online, but maybe it's something you want to leave until you get there. You can book those things online through your agent, but it's something that you can also leave to the last minute and have a kind of open itinerary if you have the luxury of time, of course.
And the cars are sort of readily available to rent?
Yes, they are. Cuba has a huge fleet of models anywhere ranging from budget to luxury, some Jeeps as well. And generally, except from around New Year's, when the large Cuban expat community comes in, you get cars available and you can book them online through your agent, and they're in generally good condition. Yeah, it's not so cheap. But then again, you're not on a package holiday. You're actually exploring and getting a very rich experience in return.
Completely different.
So, yeah.
So how do Canadians compare with other nationalities as far as taking this sort of a more exploratory vacation?
Well, that's the grand surprise, or that's what took me a bit by surprise. But out of the 1 million or so Canadians that travel to Cuba, it turns out that less than 5% or 50,000 travelers or so actually fall in that category of non-all-inclusive travelers. And when you compare that to a country like Holland, I'm from Holland, out of the 40,000 Dutchmen or so, they together have a larger participation in car rental than 1 million Canadians have.
That's a bit of a challenge for us to get out there.
That's what I think.
See a bit of the country.
That's what I think. It's absolutely worth it, and going beyond the beach is in Cuba a totally rewarding experience.
Lovely. And some of the beautiful properties in Havana, the older colonial hotels, etc.
Exactly. You don't have to fly to Spain to experience those. You can see them right at a 3.5-hour flight. Beautifully restored old colonial mansions with patios inside, and you'll hear a distant sound of a trombone or a saxophone, and it's really a very wonderful destination.
Sounds lovely.
Yeah.
So you've laid the gauntlet down, thrown the gauntlet down. You've got all the statistics. You have to come back and tell us next year if we've taken up the challenge and more of us have actually taken, you know, the opportunity to visit Havana and the country itself.
I'd love to do that, and I'd like to say that what is valid for Cuba is also valid for the DR.
Mm-hmm.
Santo Domingo is just as Havana. It's much smaller, but it has a 500-year heritage. I mean,
yeah.
Christopher Columbus's house is there. I mean, that's not being marketed, but it's a fact. So I certainly recommend the DR as well for a city break, a 3 or 4 day city break, combining culture with, you get your day at the beach, but also a wonderful experience.
All right, Eddie, thanks so much.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.